Okay. We are live. Thanks everybody. We'll give everybody a couple seconds to pile in here, but want to welcome everybody for today's conversation between Kevin O'Leary, also known as Mr. Wonderful. Kevin, good to see you. Thanks for joining.
Great to be here.
And we have a very special guest as well with Joey Bose. Joey is the CEO of Cytonics. Joey, thanks for jumping on as well.
Thank you guys for having me.
Absolutely. So if anyone is curious, you can always learn more about the company at invest.cytonics.com. You see it scrolling on the bottom here of our video. And then if you have any questions as we go through the conversation, please add those questions as comments. Our team will be running through those and hope to get to as many of them as possible during the conversation today. But I figured as a starting point, Joey, why don't you just introduce us to Cytonics and what you all are up to over there, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. So everyone, thank you so much for taking the time. Kevin, it's great to meet you. Thank you too. So Cytonics is a upstart. We're not a startup, we are an upstart, a challenge to Big Pharma and the way drug development is traditionally financed and performed. Our mission is to develop the first and maybe only true therapy for osteoarthritis. And what I mean by that is a therapy that actually addresses the root molecular cause. We call that disease modifying. To date, all therapies are palliative. They're Band-Aids. It's unacceptable. Big Pharma has failed to actually come up with a solution over the last 30 years. We know why and what to do about it. Now, equity crowdfunding has been our bread and butter. We've kept aggressive VCs off our cap table. We haven't had to partner with Big Pharma. We are doing it our own way.
Amazing. Tell us a little bit more, Joey, just about what you've been able to accomplish thus far from a development standpoint, from a capital raising standpoint. What more can you share with us?
Sure. So the company has a long and I guess the word circuitous pathway. Most biopharmaceutical companies are capitalized with big tranches of capital, 15, 20 million bucks, go. Preclinical trials, phase 1 clinical trials, get through phase 2, and then there's an exit. That's the traditional biopharma paradigm. Well, Cytonics actually started out as a medical device company. Our founder figured out a way to leverage the therapeutic activity of a naturally occurring molecule to treat the enzymes, inhibit them, that chew up cartilage. In about 2015, we pivoted to biopharmaceuticals, right? And we've raised about 15 million through equity crowdfunding, a total of about 25 million from high net worth individuals, family offices, and equity crowdfunding, as well as from a couple professional athletes that recently joined Cytonics as brand ambassadors and partners.
Kevin, you hear this story of Cytonics. You've got a lot of experience investing in multiple different industries. When you hear this, what comes to your mind? What do you think about it? Is this a little bit of a unique pathway for a company of this kind?
Well, it's rather interesting timing for Joey because there's no sector in the news more today than pharma for a whole bunch of reasons. And that's not just domestic, it's a global. And what he's talking about is the future of medicine. The idea that instead of just trying to put Band-Aids on symptoms, that you actually develop something far more meaningful for the actual patient, a true cure. And, you know, we've advanced a lot in these spaces. There's a lot of research yet to be done, and picking winners is difficult, but the potential here is a game changer for two reasons. One is one of the largest costs, if you look at the federal budget and the tax bill that is being contemplated as we speak, this hour is going to be tabled. It's healthcare. It's a brutal cost. It just doesn't stop because we haven't figured out how to really mine for success by stopping the disease in the first place or modifying the human being so that they're not afflicted by it through, you know, the research that Joey and companies like his are doing. So the noise around this space is not going to diminish. It's only going to increase. It's going to get bigger and bigger and bigger because there's a huge economic driver behind it. Plus people would rather not be sick. It's that easy. But really curing them on a preventative basis is definitely the direction. And that's what he's talking about.
Yeah, Kevin hit the nail. Sorry to interrupt. Kevin hit the nail on the head. Close to $1 trillion is going to be spent by the CMS on Medicare and Medicaid. And it's just simply easier to treat symptoms, right? Now, in addition to the amount of government expenditure, look at insurance payers and private insurance payers, employee-sponsored insurance plans. That number is a multiple of what the CMS is paying. Developing true therapies that get to the root cause has the ability to slash that budget, slash the amount of monies that employers are paying and insurance payers are going to have to pay out, as well as obviate the need for more invasive therapies. Like in our case, a joint replacement, costly, invasive. Nobody wants to deal with that. Just imagine what happens even if you don't obviate the need completely, but delay a joint replacement by 5 or 10 years. That has a significant impact on the bottom line of insurance payers. And let's be honest, ultimately, in all of healthcare, the end customer is not a patient, it's not a doctor, it's not even an insurance company, it's the PBM of the insurance company. So really, what we're trying to do, in addition to bringing patients relief, is give these insurance payers an alternate first-line therapy so they don't have to go straight to the invasive and costly. That's a win-win.
Let's talk about that for a second, because I've been through that process. I've had a hip replacement, and I tried everything to avoid doing that. And the pain just got so bad, and I did my right hip, and I don't want to do my left. It still has some cartilage left. So I want Joy to be successful very quickly, because that would be a much better outcome. There's no question about it. I mean, look, the surgery was successful, and most of them are, but it's not fun, you know. And there's a period of the whole thing's expensive. That's the problem. Nobody wants to do it, but if you can't walk and it's changing your life in a negative manner, you're going to do it. But it's very expensive.
So, Joey, talk to us a little bit further about how Cytonics is addressing these core issues that we've hit on. The expense, the regenerative aspect to all this. Give us a little bit more insight behind the curtain.
Sure. So let's start really at the genesis. I mentioned that what we're developing is a technology predicated on a naturally occurring molecule. Okay, this molecule is called A2M, and it's found in the blood. Nature has given us this gift. It turns out that A2M can block the enzymes that chew up cartilage, and that's what our founder, Dr. Scuderi, figured out. So what we're doing now is we're developing an engineered version of that naturally occurring molecule that is even more potent, so more effective in being able to block those enzymes. So it's anti-catabolic and it's an anti-inflammatory, all predicated on a naturally occurring molecule. Now that might sound familiar. You might think insulin. In 1982, Genentech and Eli Lilly created their first synthetic insulin. But prior to that, diabetics were treated with the insulin purified from animals, right? So what Lilly and Genentech were able to do was engineer a new type of insulin. It's called recombinant, that has tweaked properties. In this case, it was half-life. In our case, it's potency, and be able to develop on a commercial scale in high concentrations that can be precisely dosed across patients. So that's our overall strategy. Now, all of this is a response and a challenge to Big Pharma's failed approaches. Like I said, we understand why they failed. And traditionally, Big Pharma's paradigm is develop a single molecule that targets a single target, receptor, protein, DNA, whatever, that has a singular effect. So it can't be off target. Well, it turns out that osteoarthritis is caused by a host of these catabolic enzymes, which you call proteases. They're like little Pac-Men that chew up cartilage. So a true therapy must address all of these proteases to be effective. It's kind of like Medusa. To slay a Medusa, you have to cut off all the heads, right? Big Pharma's failed to do it. They have a myopic approach. We identified that. A2M's the solution. Turns out this naturally occurring A2M is a natural broad spectrum anti-protease drug, protease inhibitor, right? We discovered that, and then we figured out how we could leverage that to address Big Pharma's failures and put us on the right track to developing a real disease-modifying therapy.
Have you run any trials or tests or studies that have, validated this approach?
Sure. Yep. So the way the drug development works is really four main phases. The first is preclinical, like a drug discovery. First, drug discovery. You got to come up with a therapeutic modality, a putative drug candidate, test it preclinically, and then you move out of the lab into human clinical trials. Well, on June 19th, 2024, we dosed our first human patient. This was the culmination of over 7 years and $10 million in preclinical development. It was a massive scientific feat to be able to genetically engineer the A2M and be able to purify it in concentrations and to purity levels that the FDA would recognize as sufficient and that could potentially be commercially viable. So that was a big moment in June of last year. Now, all the patients have been dosed. All of the follow-ups have been completed with the physicians. And so far, there have been no drug-related adverse events reported. Still waiting for that official interim data and still waiting for that final clinical study report, which will be published later this year. Now, all of that information will go straight to the FDA to be able to support our next set of trials, right? It happens in this iterative way where constant communication with the FDA allows you to step through the regulatory process towards commercialization.
Kevin, from a investor standpoint, healthcare biotech can be challenging, but also very rewarding sectors. What do you look for in companies in these areas?
Always first, what problem is it solving and how big is that market? This is a huge market. I mean, this is, you think about it, particularly in the focus on longevity defined by mental health and mobility. There's billions of dollars going into this space now because America's aging. And all of a sudden, all kinds of people are worried about those two things, mobility and cognitive health. That's the essence of where this drive is. And mobility, I mean, you can't have longevity without mobility. You have to be able to move and exercise. And so the extent that this saves a hip, that in itself would be huge. And, or cartilage or a knee or an elbow, I mean, or, a shoulder. Just think about it. All of the complaints that people have after they turn 50 and maybe have genetic deterioration, because some people never need hip replacements and others do, but there's generally a lot of decline going on. And if this could, it's much better than the procedures that are often offered now, because they're very invasive and they're damned expensive. And the recovery time, particularly for knee joints or shoulders, just brutal. So I think there'll be a lot of interest in this. It sounds promising. And if you're interested in this space, in this sector, and why wouldn't you be? Because, I mean, this is going to be in the news for the next, I don't know how many years. I mean, it's really driven by the economics of the situation we find ourselves in. This would save a lot of money and a lot of pain. And that's a nice cocktail to be an investor in.
Joey, what are you paying attention to with all the recent news and events around your space? Is there anything you're looking out for, or promising news or tidbits that you're hearing?
Absolutely. So two things come to mind. There are two potential disease-modifying therapies that are currently in development in late-stage trials. One of them is called spurfirmin. The other one's called loricivivin. All mouthfuls. I hate the way that the drugs are named. You can barely even say them. Interestingly, their mechanisms of action differ from our proposed mechanism of action, and it's complementary. Spurfirmin, the loricivivin, honestly act as the gas towards creating cartilage, whereas our drug, it's called CYT108, Site 108, as an homage to the name of the company, as well. The 108 refers to the 108th attempt we made to develop this drug. So you can see it was very involved. Site 108 is like the brake to cartilage destruction, gas and brake. I want both those drugs to get approved. Oftentimes people think first to market. That's not how it works in biotech. In biotech, markets are enormous, and oftentimes you need drugs with this identical mechanism of action to be able to treat an entire population. Case in point, Keytruda, best-selling drug of all time, just replaced Humira. PD-L1 treats what I think they got their 42nd indication for all kinds of cancers, and there are multiple other PD-L1s out there. Here's one you'll be familiar with: the GLPs. How many GLPs are there now? There's like 50. It's insane. So what I want to see is another disease-modifying therapy get approved, especially if it has complementary action, a complementary mechanism of action that will drive attention to the sector, more investment to the sector, and could potentially result in a combination trial, possibly a combination therapy if these drugs get approved.
Kevin, you're someone that's obviously close to the news and recent events. There's been a new administration that's taken the Oval Office. Is there anything that you're seeing or hearing related to regulatory approvals for drugs? And there's always been these major holdups and delays and things of that nature. Do you see any ease of regulations happening in that area as well?
Well, we have major new policy being proposed even this morning, particularly on drug pricing. Whether it gets through Congress is another story. But also Kennedy was an interesting appointee and now confirmed and sworn in. Very interested in lowering medical costs. So that momentum is very positive, and very interested in diet in America, which has caused so many problems, including diabetes. And so I think this whole area is going to get a lot more scrutiny, a lot more press, a lot more focus, a lot more social media as people start to explore alternative ways of staying healthy and cutting costs. I can't stress the cost factor enough, because it is the one budget item that is out of control, completely out of control. And there's a lot of reasons for that. But just hammering pharma companies isn't enough. Like, that's not going to work, whether that even happens or not through Congress. It's more about changing the entire protocol and focusing on preventing bad outcomes. That's how you save trillions of dollars. And who doesn't want that? The population is extremely motivated if you give them the path to say, look, if you don't try this procedure, you'll end up with artificial limbs in 10 years or 5 years, the way things are going for you. Generally, you get off your ass when you hear that. That's what would happen. And that's what will happen.
And Joey, is that the main reason why Cytonics has gone the equity crowdfunding route for its capital needs, as opposed to the more traditional sources, is going directly to the crowd and to the people that are dealing with these issues and asking them to stand up and try to fund the change?
That's one of the reasons. First and foremost, venture capital money is aggressive. VCs get on your cap table, they slash and burn it. It's not attractive to us. We know that we have a real therapy. We're driven by a team of very successful individuals in our own regards. The founder is an orthopedic surgeon, probably the best spine surgeon on the East Coast, maybe the West Coast as well. The company emerged while he was doing a fellowship at Stanford, published over 45 papers. Amazing driving force behind the company. Myself, I'm a biomedical engineer, cross skill set in investment banking. The chief scientific officer is a genius protein chemist, over 30 years at Big Pharma. So he knows how to get this done. We understand the challenges of Big Pharma, of working with Big Pharma, working with venture capitalists. We want nothing to do with the institutions. We are a grassroots revolution. This is a company for the people, by the people. We're challenging all of the incumbents. When we are successful, this will be the first biopharmaceutical company that has ever done this. And we're going to be extremely happy and extremely proud of the over 6,000 shareholders currently that are going to get us there. That is going to be an amazing day, ringing that bell potentially, or however the exit ends up taking shape for early investors.
Let's go to some questions from the audience. We do have lots of questions and people tuned in right now. So one question here for Joey: what are the biggest hurdles of getting through the regulatory approval process?
Sure. Just generally, the FDA approval process is extremely rigorous. There's a reason why a lot of these drugs cost so much money, and that's because the rate of attrition and capex that goes into a single drug getting approved is enormous. By Analyst estimates it takes in between 2.5 to $5 billion per drug approved. That doesn't mean it costs that much money to get it approved, but if you look at the costs that were sunk into all the failures, divide that by the numbers of drugs that get approved per year, which are like 50. That is an enormous figure, right? So you can see that the rate of attrition of drug development is enormous, okay? And it actually follows a pattern called Ahrum's law, the opposite of Moore's law, right? Remember Moore's law? Number of transistors double every X amount of years, exponential scale in computation. Ahrum's law is the reverse. Drug development gets harder and harder and harder and harder. One reason is the low-hanging fruit's been picked. The easy drugs and easy diseases have been solved. Now we're working on the harder ones, but the FDA doesn't change its regulatory requirements. And that's a great thing in a lot of regards. It's very, very challenging. The highest rate of attrition is during phase 2 clinical trials. So we expect that one to be the most difficult. Now, to mitigate that risk, there are a few things that you can do. One is constant communication with the FDA, so they are apprised of the status of your drug development, as well as the challenges you face and how you've overcome them. A unique de-risking element for Cytonics is the fact that our lead drug candidate, that Cyte-108, that engineered variant of the naturally occurring A2M, is uniquely de-risked by the fact that we've developed a first-gen technology that leverages that natural A2M purified from your own blood. Its commercial and clinical success is really a testament to that. We've already treated over 10,000 patients, many of whom experience immediate relief, and certainly within 24 to 48 hours, including professional athletes like Hoist Gracie, a number of our early investors, surgeons, and patients who have used the tech. That is a very unique de-risking element as we move through the drug development process. Very non-traditional, usually with de novo drug design. This is a first foray into exploring the mechanism of action, and there might be a lot of adverse events you don't know. But because Cyte-108 is based on a naturally occurring molecule, it stands to reason that if it's effective in humans and has no side effects, right, then our engineered version has a lot of potential in that regard. So that's a very important thing to realize about how our drug development program is de-risked through the incredibly rigorous and difficult FDA approval process.
Kevin, one of the audience members asked here, what do you think is the key to scaling a healthcare innovation company?
Well, success in trials, obviously. You get through that, gets through stage 3, and magic happens because it's a solution. It becomes a viable solution, and what very often happens is a large pharma company that has distribution globally will buy it, and that's traditionally been the model. And that's a very, very good outcome for investors, particularly if it's one of just a few drugs that achieves the success. Those exit multiples are extraordinary because they address massive markets and they've gone through the challenge of the stage 1, 2, 3 trials. So that's the best outcome. You don't have to develop your own distribution. You never have to if you have a successful drug. And in some ways, reinventing distribution is not a great investment. Providing product for distribution has proven to be better for investors because there's every large distribution entity, whether it's Big Pharma, whoever it is always seeking what's next. And this very well could be what's next in a massive market. I mean, think about how big it is. It addresses mobility. That's what it does.
Joey, another question here. Can you tell us more about your drug delivery system injection into humans?
Sure. So this is referencing our first generation technology, and we call it the APIC system, which stands for autologous, meaning coming from self, protease inhibitor, that's the A2M, concentrate system. So what we're able to do is draw patient's blood, centrifuge it, run it through our proprietary filtration system, which just takes advantage of the fact that the A2M is enormous and all the rest of the blood proteins are tiny. So imagine a sand in the sea. We just retain the enormous A2M, take that purified A2M concentrate, and inject it directly into afflicted joints. And that can be fingers, toes, knees, elbows, hips, like in the case of Kevin, shoulders, etc. And spine too, any joint that contains articular cartilage. So it's a direct to joint injection, which is huge because what that means is it avoids systemic delivery. So it's targeted. So there are lower chances of off-target effects, of side effects, because the drug does not distribute throughout the body.
Gotcha. Well, great. Listen, we're coming up on time here, and so I just wanted to, in closing, thank both Joey, you, and Kevin for jumping on today and diving into this conversation further. Again, if you need to learn more, please visit invest.cytonics.com. And you can learn more about the company and the offering and everything that's going on with the business. But gentlemen, thank you both again so much for your time. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Kevin.
I'll be hitting on Joy for my left hip soon.
You got it.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, if you want the therapy,
fly
out there.
I do want the therapy, so I'm going to be talking to you.
Yeah.
That's the best pitch when you get a customer out of it. I mean, my goodness, you know how many people when they hear about this are going to want this? I mean, this is a big deal. All right, good luck, Joey. Ciao.
Thank you so much. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.